Hi, I'm Dumbledore, and I'm really excited to share this interview with Karel Psota. He is a sound designer, originally born in France, moved to Los Angeles to kind of find his fame and fortune, maybe even work on film scoring, and found a real niche in sound design and trailer sound design. He's done sound design for movie trailers like Justice League, Fantastic Beasts, and Spider-Man Homecoming, but he's also created a sample library doing sound design for that, and has a number of trailer houses which he works with to develop and deliver sound design of all kinds of nature. Recently, he just did a course with Evenant, the online course. I'll include a link to that for trailer sound design. If you're a composer like myself, learning a little bit more about sound design can go a really long way. I went in, jumped in, started taking the course yesterday, so I'm pretty excited to talk to him about some of my questions, learn about his background, and I think there's some real gems in here, not only on his methods and tools that he used, but also on his journey and his mindset. I think we're going to get a lot out of it. So here's the interview with Karel Psota. I'm here with Karel Psota. That's how you pronounce his name properly. He's a sound designer and has had some really great credits, as well as just putting together really informative course online with the Evenant guys. Luckily, I got a chance to sit down and watch about an hour of videos of the course and read through it and really get myself educated on that. But I have a whole lot of questions about your journey to getting where you're at, as well as, you know, some of the tools and focus that you have. I guess the first question I'd like to ask you, Karel, is what got you into sound design in the first place?
Well, it was actually by accident. I really liked music production, so I would just do, write songs and whatnot. And then naturally, I just was making my own sounds without really giving extra thought. And I guess other composers were using sample libraries, which is totally fine, but I always liked doing everything from scratch. I thought that had a more unique sound to it. And yeah, one day just friends of mine were saying, hey, what are your sounds? What are your drums? What is that? And so I showed them it was all from scratch. And then the idea was like, why don't you sell these to other people or submit them for licensing? And so yeah, I started doing pop stuff, and then that evolved into trailer sound design, with shape risers and whatnot.
Yeah, very good. I think that one thing, watching the course, which we'll talk about in more detail later, but watching it, just showing how you're inside the closet with the coat hanger, yeah. And then what you do and what it becomes to be, something that sounds and may have been used in a trailer. It's pretty amazing to see. I always say I learn the most sitting behind the shoulder, sitting behind the desk of talented composers and sound designers. I definitely was inspired by that. How do you find? How do you find inspiration as a sound designer?
Well, luckily, I'll just go around the house, and I think about it like Pokemons. So I will try to capture wild sounds, in the kitchen and the car, and I'll just go around and hit stuff without really thinking too much about it. And then when I get back in the studio and I put it in Ableton Live, I just browse through the samples. And there'll be just one sound that just screams to me, like, do something with this. And that's where the inspiration starts. Just a raw sample that's like, it has the potential. It's like a little Charmander, and it needs to evolve. So I'll come in and just give it some sweet love with some processing and see where it goes. And most of the time I have no idea where it's going to go. I have a vague idea of the direction, but a lot of, trial and error, happy accidents lead to some, crazy sound design.
Yeah, that was probably part of my follow-up question, which was, do you ever set out to do I'm going to do a whole bunch of whooshes, or I'm going to do a whole bunch of hits, or is it always I'm capturing everything I can and seeing what comes out of it?
Well, yeah, usually I'll start with a strong idea. So yeah, we want hits, And while I'm recording hits, I'll just try to scrape something slowly and say like, oh, wow, this is a cool like texture. Then I'll use that as a whoosh later on. So yeah, I always start with a strong idea as a goal, and I get sidetracked like all the time. So yeah, have just a strong guideline and then get inspired by what you find on the location, you know?
No, I know that so many of our viewers and readers are going to be interested in this, but I'm wondering if you could tell us, like, what's your basic setup? What DAW do you use? And are there like standard plugins? You know, I know you mention a ton of them in the course, but what are just like a handful of things that are your like desert island?
All right. So, well, I guess it's very like problem solving tools. So first of all, I work in Ableton Live 9. It's a really friendly DAW for sound design. You can do very long racks and a lot of parallel processing. But usually, yeah, my plugins involved a lot of EQ. So yeah, any EQ will do, stock EQ. I like to use a lot of multiband compression. So I'll use, yeah, Pro MB by FabFilter, C4 by Waves. So this really allows me to kind of control the EQ of a sound over time. So for example, sometimes you want the transient to be not as harsh, but the tail to conserve a certain high frequencies. So I'll use, yeah, multiband to control that. Another example would be like, let's say during a heavy, like punchy hit, 200 hertz is very good for the transient, but not good for the tail. So I'll automate EQ or take a multiband compression to leave 200 hertz on the attack of the hit, and then on the sub hit, I'll take it away. And then the last one I would use is R-Bass, which is a sub-harmonic generator. So this allows you to create low end in samples that don't have any. So if you like have a cardboard box and you hit it, it might be a bit lacking of low end, and EQ won't do anything. So try maybe, yeah, R-Bass, Low Air by Waves. Low Ender is also another good one. So yeah, these are kind of my go-to for processing. Then yeah, reverbs are also important. So I would use algorithmic reverbs that are very clean. So yeah, Valhalla Room is a good one. And then I like to use also impulse responses. So Altiverb has very interesting colors. It's basically absorbing the information of a room with all its flaws. So the stereo imaging could be a bit off. There could be some notches in the EQ, the tail. Each frequency has a different decay time. So it's a very unique sounding reverb that could really give a nice color to a sound. And then I guess for synthesizers, I do everything in Xfer Serum. I really don't use anything else nowadays. It's my go-to.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I'm taking notes as you go as you go along. It saves me time later, but yeah, I'll include the links to everything that you mentioned in the description below, or there'll be a link to take you over to the show page. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into doing sound design to license for trailers? Did you start out and say, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm focused on, or what's your background? Is it in music or a band?
Yeah, so it was a bit of an accident. I started in France. I was like 14, had a rock band. I didn't have enough creative vision. We were like always fighting, so I went on my own to do my own music. So I was doing EDM at the time, around 16. So I learned a lot about mixing, mastering, synthesizers around that time. So that was a very crucial part of my experience. And then I was like, well, yeah, DJing's fun and all that, but I think I really like being in the studio, studying tracks like Madeon and stuff like that, really like pop perfection. And then that led me to just really appreciate production and applying that to anything. So when I arrived to LA, I lost all my kind of DJ EDM fan base, and I had to find a quick way to do money, so I went directly into a film. I started scoring short films with my limited knowledge of orchestration and whatnot. And one time, just randomly, I had this roommate that was a guitar player, and his brother was a trailer editor, and he was requesting his little brother to do some little guitar sounds, like some stingers. And I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And that ends up in a trailer. And I was like, just in front of me, my roommate was making stuff, and a month later it was in a trailer. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I can do stuff with synthesizers and see where that goes. So I started making very simple sounds like downers, you know, stuff like that. So I made maybe 10 while I was in school in the cafeteria, sent an email, and before I knew it, it was in a trailer in San Andreas with The Rock. And that was like, hey, this is it. I'm going to focus on that. And then music came afterwards. But yeah, I first started with sound design and trailers.
That's great. I think a lot of people I talk to who don't live in Los Angeles, they always say, you know, do I have to live in Los Angeles to work in film and television and games? And I always tell them no, but there's so many happy accidents, and it sounds like you kind of stumbled upon one.
So that was really a happy accident that came out of the blue. Now, of course, you can, if you have the knowledge, you can obviously do that on your own and email trailer houses and offer them your sounds. Of course, yeah, meeting people at a bar or stuff like that seems kind of crazy. But yeah, a lot of career stuff happens. Just like I was at a wedding the other day, and I didn't know anyone, and except the bride that was, you know, hidden for the wedding. And I go out to help a couple take a picture, and the guy is like a lead sound designer at Riot Games. So I was like, wow, this is LA for you. You just walk around and meet people that are passionate about the same thing. So yeah, I think, yeah, LA is definitely a pro, but you don't need it. You know, if you're really good at your craft, people will notice you. I know, for example, Source Sound, I think Charles Deenan noticed Jaroslav Beck. I think he was doing like sound design stuff with Iron Man footage, and then he got work in LA. So yeah, you can definitely do it from where you are. Just put stuff on YouTube, stuff online. People will know who you are if you're good and get in touch with you.
Yeah. Another thing, I don't want to pry too much, but you're a relatively young man.
Yes.
And listening to you speak, and especially, you know, going through the chapters of the course and the videos I got to, I really got a taste of just how deep your knowledge is about sound, about frequency range, and not only that, but about how to control and manipulate. Is there anything in particular that you feel helped you dive into that, or is it something that you just kind of took to, messed around with, and learned on your own?
Well, it's kind of funny. When I was in high school in France, I did a scientific branch, and they force you to make choices. You have to do like presentations. And I said to myself, well, science is great, but I need to find a way to apply it to what I like. So each time I had something that I had a subject to choose, I would choose something like acoustics or like psychoacoustics or stuff like that. So I would always find a way to absorb as much knowledge as I can in any situation related to sound and music. So yeah, a lot of physics helped me early on to figure out why sounds are good, why our ears are so sensible to certain frequencies. So yeah, I would recommend being a kind of versatile and study different fields related to music. It's definitely, it can only help you, I think. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I've always kind of been conscious of that. I did study some physics of acoustics. I attended college for a little while. And I've always still feel in my composition and arranging, I'm always kind of thinking about those frequency ranges, like what has impact and how it has impact and why it has impact. And, I mean, it's probably doubly so with sound design.
Yeah, I mean, the sounds are so short. Like, you have only 2 seconds to show your mastery of sound design. So you better use all the tricks you have in your bag to make a perfect sound, you know? Like, one of the really important ones for me was understanding the importance of sustained sounds. So you can have something really loud for a split second, and that's not too bad. But then if you sustain it too loud, that gets very aggressive. So you can play around with that. Like most of the explosions, let's say, for example, Doom, you know, the soundtrack by Mick Gordon. He uses a lot of like slow attack compressors. So you have this super clicky punch, and then the waveform comes down. But this is very, very appealing to the ears. I think that's why, I love Mick Gordon. He's a great example of, perfect sound design, mixing, and creative ways of production.
Yeah, he
and
does. Sorry, I didn't mean.
And the other one I wanted to mention was understanding the stereo fields. How you have ways to trick your ears with, like, let's say the Haas effect. You know, if you delay 2 clicks, you will hear them left and right. But if you do it like 30 ms apart, it just sounds like a wide sound. If you do it less than 30 ms, your ear gets confused and puts it back in the center. So yeah, there's a lot of funny tricks you can do on your brain with audio.
Yeah. Mick is a great guy. Him and I have, I've met him a few times at the Game Developers Conference, and one time we snuck into one of the big parties together. Yeah, so we hung out quite a bit. He's a great guy. I haven't talked to him for years, but amazing composer, great stuff. I'll include a link to his stuff below as well. It's great to hear that you've been inspired by his stuff. Do you keep up on trailers? Like, do you watch every trailer that comes out?
Oh, sadly, I feel guilty, but I don't. Like, I know people go on Trailer Addict and every day look at the trailers. I do follow a few trailer houses. Like, I like Transit. They have very musical edits with the cuts. And then also, like, Source Sound. It's a company that does audio finishing for trailers and video games. They have really exceptional quality and unique, like, kind of sounds. So yeah, I'll usually follow these companies, and then if a trailer is really good, obviously, it gets to you. It's marketing; they'll spam it everywhere, so it will get to my ears if it's really good. And yeah, when you go to theaters too, I pay close attention to these too. So yeah, I do actually probably spend a lot of time studying trailers without noticing too much. Yeah,
yeah, I try to limit it to 1 day a week where I'll go, okay, what came out this week? And I'll go watch them all and make notes of stuff that I loved and
actually,
try to find out.
That's a pretty good idea. I should set that. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah.
One thing I was going to kind of ask you about is I find that as composers and sound designers, being an entrepreneur and having an entrepreneurial spirit is so important. How has that played into your success thus far as a sound designer?
Well, I think it's extremely important in any creative field because no one wants to pay for art. They will always try to, like, make a bargain saying, hey, do this work for free and we'll provide you a credit or exposure. It's very hard to make money with art. So you have to be really confident about your work, have a solid business plan, know your value on the market, do the numbers, figure out the taxes and everything. So I think it's very, very, very crucial. For example, I didn't study music. I wanted to study music, but I decided to just do a bachelor's in, what did I do? Business, just to learn a bit more about law and whatnot to get my company started and whatnot. So yeah, I would highly recommend to just, go online, study how invoices work, how companies do the filing, the billing and everything. And especially know your value on the market. I see too many composers that are really talented and that underquote their work. Even, labels sometimes undervalue what they have. Like, do some research around. And be confident about your work. It's probably worth way more than you think. So that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Now, in the course, which I'm gonna go ahead and start to dig into some questions I had about the trailer, trailer sound design from source to cinema is the name of the Evenant course, and I'll include a link in that. You touch upon a little bit of the different ways that you can start to create income as a sound designer. You talk a little bit about, there's different paths, either putting your own album out or directly touching base to trailer houses or working with a music production company. Has there been one main force, one of those paths, I should say, that you've had success with?
I think both were successful, but they're very different, and they both have huge flaws, I guess, to both of them. So in a nutshell, there's business to business. So that's you doing industry releases and giving that to trailer houses, and they license that. And that usually, the amount of money you get is higher. However, the amount of placements is lower, and the payment delay time is usually 4 to 6 months. So you have to be careful about where you are income-wise, because you can get 5 placements within a week, but only get paid 6 months later. And by the time you get there, you might be in debt. So very tricky. The other one is the more stable one. It's basically business to consumer. What you do is you create commercial sound design libraries and sell these for a smaller price to the general audience. So that's a great way to create passive income. Monthly, people will buy them, and it's pretty steady with PayPal transactions. So I'd say it's a good place to start, but it's also a dangerous place because you're putting your name on the market and everyone can see it. So if you do a misstep or your quality control is not good enough, you might tarnish, I guess, not destroy your reputation, but yeah, you have to be careful with your image the moment you do a public release. So yeah, they both have pros and cons.
And then you've also developed a sample library, which was reviewed on Sample Library Review, Instinct, AVA Instinct. Now that's another potential income stream for you as a sound designer. Was that something that you'd always thought you wanted to do, or did you just partner with AVA and it was a good fit? How did that come about?
Well, so I was AVA is a company, so I didn't start that company. They were doing a music catalog, music library licensing, and I was a composer over there. And they came over to LA to do a little interview for 2 days, and so I wrote a track with them for the interview, and they noticed that I was doing everything from scratch. And at that point, they were like, "Oh, whoa, maybe we can try and release that publicly." And they flew me to Detroit, where they are. We recorded for 3 days in crazy places, warehouses, churches, studios. And we basically, I mean, both of us really, so it was me, Clément, and so it was also Scott, the head of AVA. And the three of us really had no idea what we were really doing. We were like, hey, we're going to make cool sounds and see what we can do with this. And we had this fantastic camera guy from Red Bull that was here, who filmed everything, and then we had the raw recordings. I spent the next 3 months in LA just processing them. Probably made 1,000 samples and only selected 100 in the end. But yeah, that was a happy accident. It was just an afterthought after an interview. I was showing what I was doing, and that turned out very, very good. Yeah. But yeah, in a nutshell, yeah, AVA Instinct was really an accident, and we just tried to do something new with cool visuals and cool sounds, and it worked. But again, that was really an accident. So yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, that's great. It does sound fantastic. Is creating another sample library for composers something you'd like to do again in the future, or you're considering?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about something new, but I still haven't found the right idea. So we might do Instinct Vol 2 on the same premise, so with the same type of sounds, just new ones. But yeah, we're thinking maybe, I like to do also pop production, so I might do a drum library for really good like pop drums, and maybe trailer drums one day, but that is far. I mean, that is a whole other budget level, getting taiko drums and ensembles with the huge spaces, so I don't think I'm there yet, but it's in my mind, yeah.
One of the things you talk about in the trailer sound design course is vision is more important than plug-in quality.
Yeah, so that is very important. So I think most most people will try to buy a plugin because it sounds a bit better than another. For example, you can take two EQs, $1,000 EQ and a $100 EQ, and if you compare them, well, they'll sound a bit different. However, if you compare two different settings with the same EQ, that will sound much more different than two types of plugins. So what I'm really saying here is that the way you EQ something is much more important than the plugin you use to EQ. So the decisions of taking away, let's say 3 dB at 4K has way more impact than choosing between two different EQs. So I think you can do a lot with stock plugins if your vision is really strong and you know where you're going. I hope that was clear. It's kind of a confusing topic to explain, but hopefully I did a good job.
No, I think it's... Yeah, you did a good... I think you did a good job, and I think it's very important in not just sound design, but in composition as well. The understanding what you're trying to do and having a vision for creating a compelling piece of music, even a virtual piece of music with virtual instruments, it's still the same thing. It's much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything translates to music production. The most important thing is hearing what's missing and what's excessive. That is like a skill that's so basic but so hard to know, you know? Like a pro guy within a second will know that this taiko doesn't need to be here and you can delete it. Whereas someone starting out will layer maybe too many things and not hear that stuff is clashing or stuff is missing, you know? So I think, yeah, having this ability to understand what's missing and what's lacking is probably the core of sound design and music production in general.
One of the things I really enjoyed in the course is you did a playthrough of an original trailer track you'd done, and you broke it down and played through each sound and talked about how each sound was created. You mentioned something that I think is universal in sound design and composition as well, which is that good arrangement and good production trump having to mix and having to master. Like, you shouldn't have to struggle to mix and you shouldn't have to struggle to master.
Yeah, honestly, the moment you're struggling with the mix and it's not fun and it's not obvious and you don't know what to EQ, it means that the production's all wrong. Usually mixing should only be like a few dBs here and there and a bit of volume automation. Usually, in my tracks, I try to get the sound design top quality and then don't do anything on the mix and master of the track. If the hits are well done and everything is balanced at normal volumes, usually, you can get a good sound. Of course, some people like to crush their masters and whatnot, which is sometimes works for trailers, but I find that dynamics usually allow you to cut through the mix in a final trailer a bit better. Just focus on arrangements before all.
Yeah, I think that I was really pleasantly surprised going through, the chunks that I could on the trailer sound design course, to see that so much of it conceptually is the same across music composition, virtual music composition, and sound design. I was really pleased with that.
In a way, it's funny, making a 3-second sounds is like making a 3-minute track, but condensed. You have the same problems to solve, but they're just at a tiny, small scale. But if you understand these at a micro level, then the macro level is, the big picture makes more sense. But yeah, one thing that fascinated me was, just understanding what makes a kick drum. It's such a simple sound, but if you don't know about the drum room or the transients or how the pitch decays, all these elements have so much importance, and down the road in the production, the mixing, the mastering, they'll have so much impact. So you have to get it right at the source. Yeah.
So recording, getting great, clean source recordings is absolutely the start of sound design?
Yeah, I would go there. Then again, there's a way to clean up audio that's completely messed up. So you can get away with, you can actually polish a turd in sound design. People would say, no, you need like perfectly good recordings, which is true. But honestly, with any microphone, even an iPhone, and a clean transient with not too much noise. So yeah, if the noise level is low, you can usually find a way to make a really good sound. You can use, room reverbs to create a sense of realism and space. Then you can use, compressors, distortion to add more highs. You have so many options to create a great sound with very little. But, I gave 2 advices here, but I think good sound is always better at the source. But you can get away with very minimal recordings and make something that's worth licensing in a trailer.
You mentioned recording with an iPhone, which is great. You showed some examples or talked about it in the course. But one of the questions I got from one of the readers when I told people that I was going to interview you, they said, what stereo handheld recorder should I get if I want to get started learning how to work with high quality sound design?
The quick answer is the Zoom H5. It just works. It has a very low noise floor, which is great. Really good preamps, very good autonomy. I use that for everything. I haven't compared all of them, but that was, the first one I bought after reading a lot of reviews and listening to different demos. And that works. And I think one key thing here is to really pay attention to the mic placement. That again, it's like the vision theory. If you have a really good mic placement, that could sound way better than any microphone. Make sure you try different angles, put your ear close to the source, see if that's a good spot. It can make a huge difference, especially with drums. I can't emphasize how much, like an inch away can make a huge difference that you would never be able to fix with EQ later on. So many acoustics phenomenon happening in a room. So yeah, mic placement more important than actual microphone. Yeah.
And then another question I had from the Sample Library Review readers is, what advice would you give someone that wants to get into doing sound design professionally? Like, what would you give yourself?
So I would say reference. You have to reference a lot of work and try to remake popular sounds. I think a lot of people that start out are just experimenting, which is good. But to make it as a professional, you have to be able to remake sounds you have in your head. And a good place to start is to remake sounds that already exist out there. So take a trailer, take a hit, and try to listen. Is this a taiko drum? Is this a surdo? Is it a grand casa? Is there an anvil layered in there? Is there a cymbal at the top? Is there a ride? What is the compression in the mid-range? Think about all these questions when you're remaking a sound. And on top of that, I think referencing is really crucial for sound design because the sound is so short and you loop it so much that you get tunnel vision almost instantly. If you hear a mistake and you listen to it 5 times, your ear will adjust to that EQ curve and not realize that it's too bright or too muddy. Putting a reference allows you to immediately tell that your sound is off in a way or another. Reference. That's my advice.
My question there would be, when you are doing that kind of work, when you're referencing and trying to emulate a sound that you're inspired by, are you going in and looking at the frequency response at all, or are you trying to just do it by ear?
Yeah, I do everything. I'll do a visual. It's good to always understand the relation between the visuals and what you hear. I like to hear a problem with my ears and then kind of imagine how the problem would look visually. It's very good to have a connection between the two. But yeah, mostly use your ears. And one thing I would also do is, spectrum analyzers are not that precise when it comes to short sounds. Let's say if you have a pitch decaying, you will actually not really see that in a spectrum analyzer. If it's very fast, it'll just look like a hit. You have to actually be able to hear the rates of the pitch. Is that exponential? Is it linear? So hearing curves is, frequency curves and movements at a very small scale is really key.
You talked about listening. I see you've got, what do you have, some Atom 7X monitors? Is that correct?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. These are my main monitors. I've had them since I'm probably 14. So yeah, I just love these monitors. They have these ribbon tweeters, so they go really high, like 50K, which is, you don't hear that, but it has a lot of, how do you call that? I guess, liberty. It's very at ease in that range. It's not harsh at all. So this is good for very long sessions. So they're a bit softer on the ears, which is sometimes a trap. A harsh sound might not sound harsh on these. So you have to be aware of that. Then I'm using these Auratones, which are also called horror tones because they are horrible. It's they distort easily. There's no bass, no highs. So if something sounds good on that, it's usually pretty good on anything else. And then I have the complete opposite, which is the THX, what is that? Is that Logitech something? I bought these because Joshua Crispin has these, and he mixes everything on these, which I still cannot believe because I have no idea how they behave. There's a sub too, so it's all highs, all bass with a weird EQ curve. And yeah, Joshua does everything on these, so I really wanted to hear how he perceived sounds in his room. And so I have to give it to the man. These are not great speakers, but he manages to make such amazing sounds out of these. So I think the story here is that it doesn't really matter what you use. Just take something you're comfortable with.
Which Logitech speakers did you say those were?
They're like $100. It's the Logitech THX model. Yeah, these are honestly, I think, $120 at Best Buy. And they have a sub, like a big sub with them. So you can really work on your low end already with such a cheap pair of speakers.
And are those primarily computer monitors?
Yeah, they're not at all. Yeah, they're computer, like hi-fi consumer grade stuff. And also I want to mention, I also calibrate my speakers. I use, I don't know if you know SonarWorks. This is a company that does EQ calibration. So yeah, with a mic, you just measure different positions and then have a corrective EQ curve. I really like this because when I move to other studios in different rooms, I always feel lost. So I'll bring my mic and recalibrate a room to get a linear curve. So yeah, everywhere I go, I always mix on a familiar curve, so I'm never lost.
Yeah, I think that's an often understated importance. Doesn't matter what design tools you have or what knowledge you have. If your room doesn't sound right and you don't know how your room responds, and you don't have different points of reference, like you have 3 different sets of speakers, you can't truly know what you're doing. So
yeah, you have to be aware. Even if you have a bad room, it's okay, but please be aware of the problems of your room. Like if there's a bump at 100 hertz and a dip at 50 hertz, really make sure you're aware of that. A quick way to do that is to take a sine wave and you just sweep it from the top to bottom, like whoop, and you're listening closely to see if there's volumes, dips here and there. Then you can write that on a piece of paper. So at least you're like aware of how your room sounds before you're mixing, you know? And if you have the budget, yeah, try to calibrate. That's always a good way to fix that issue.
Yeah, I think those are extremely valuable insights. I've got a couple kind of quick questions for you, just so we can get to know you a little bit better. Are you a coffee, tea, beer, or wine drinker?
Wow. All right. So I'm French and I do not like wine. So this is already, I don't know what's wrong with me, but no, I'm a tea person. So I will take black tea with honey 5 times a day. It keeps me awake. And I try to stay away actually from coffee. I feel like I'll get addicted if I start coffee. Same with beer. It's, I mean, when I go out, of course, but not when I'm working. I know some people, yeah, work with like Pepsi, like Daniel James. Yeah, I stay with my black tea. Works for me. What about you?
Oh, I'm a coffee, water and coffee all day long for me.
I'm just curious. What have you ever tried to stop drinking coffee? Do you have side effects?
You know, every once in a while, either when I'm traveling or on vacation, I'll just not have coffee for a few days, and it doesn't bother me. But then again, it doesn't bother me to drink coffee up until an hour before I go to bed. Like I still fall asleep, no problem. So,
wow. All right.
you know,
Huh.
different people have different sensitivities.
Yeah, I have friends that if they stop coffee, they'll just like have headaches, panic attacks, and whatnot. So glad you're not too addicted. Yeah.
Yeah, I rarely have panic attacks, regardless either way. One question I wanted to ask, of anything you've bought, doesn't have to be music related. Do you have under $100, something you've purchased in the last couple months that's really been a blessing in your life?
All right. So I started ordering on Amazon these, they're called care packs. I think something like that, care packages. So it's like $30 and it's a collection of like chocolate bars, like healthy stuff, you know, to like protein and whatnot. So yeah, that allows me to stay a bit on top of food because I tend to forget to eat. So I'll try to like get this big package with the right amount of nutritious stuff and just pick it when I'm starving or something. So I think that, I mean, I don't know if it's a good advice, but it works for me. I will let you know in a few months if it was a terrible idea or not.
No, I think it's a great idea. I actually carry a couple different kinds of bars with me because you just need to maintain your energy and something for your body to keep burning, to keep working.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't take care enough of my body, so I need to work on that. So if you have any advice, yeah, please let me know. Yeah, I forget to eat, forget to go out. I just in my DAW all day, so it's kind of worrying.
Yeah, I think it's an easy lifestyle to do while you're younger. Once you start to get, after 30 or around my age in mid 30s or whatever, you start to feel it a little bit more. Do you have a guilty YouTube pleasure?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This guy I just discovered recently, he's called Video Game Donkey. He does video game reviews, but his sense of comedy and narratives is so advanced and unpredictable. I think this guy is a comic genius. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years he directs like Avengers or stuff like that. You know how James Gunn was shooting like pornos before he did Guardians of the Galaxy? I think this YouTube guy is going to get noticed by Marvel or something, and he's going to be huge. So yeah, go check it out. Video Game Donkey. He has this video called Epic Skyrim. It's my favorite. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, great. I'll include the link to that as well. And then the last thing, is there a movie, concert, streaming series, or game that you've been into that has been a really surprisingly enjoyable piece of entertainment lately?
Yeah, so I always saw the poster and trailer for this movie called Paddington. It's a little bear, a British bear that's very polite. And I was like, okay, it's a movie for kids, whatever, I won't watch it. And one day I just got recommended again to watch it. So I actually sat down, watched the two of them straight in a row, and it was the most beautiful experience ever. I think these movies are a gem, like miracles. They're just like perfect filmmaking. Everything, every line of dialogue has a purpose that ends up later on in the movie, and everything flows so naturally and emotionally. It also has a political message that's very right. So yeah, I highly recommend watching Paddington. And they're just happy family movies, so it's just like brings a bit of positivity in a world that's kind of dark. So highly recommend these movies.
Great. Yeah, I have not seen them, but I do have it on my long list of movies to catch. So
Yeah, I honestly think they're some of the best movies of the decade. Harry Potter level. Yeah.
that's it's exciting to hear. I will definitely check them out. Karel, thank you for spending some time sharing some of your insight and wisdom. I know that I've gotten some tips, and I know that other viewers and readers are going to get a lot of ideas and inspiration out of this. I'll be sure to include a link below for your course so people can check that out as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be here. And yeah, excited to see what students do with the class. And yeah, happy sound design, I guess.